Joining the More Than Your Age podcast is actress, podcast host, author, and comedian, Cari Haim. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you here. Carrie, you responded on a post on Threads regarding starting over, and your response just caught my eye. You said, or you wrote, you said that you wrote, produced, and starred in your first short film at the age of 51. It did well in festivals, and you did your first stand-up set at the age of 53, and you won a comedy contest 8 months later. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm passionate about and definitely want to hear. And so then you shared even more information about you, and I was just like, oh gosh, well, this woman even more so exudes just the mission and the passion behind of what I have for the More Than Your Age podcast and the message. And so you grew up acting with your brother. And I want to know what made you get into acting at such a young age. And then why did your family decide to move to LA?
So, you know what? Acting was just one of the, we were a sporty family. Like we played hockey. We grew up in Toronto, Canadian kids. So we played hockey. My dad used to flood the backyard playground that all the families shared to create an ice rink out there every winter. So we were skating, we were playing baseball in the summer. Our dad was our coach, really sporty. But in my heart of hearts, I really loved acting. And we met a lovely woman who lived sort of around the corner from us at one point, and she taught acting to children. So it went from there. We had friends who had agents and things. This is sort of late 70s, early 80s. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And then when you're I'm the older one. And so my little brother just kind of came along for the ride. I don't know that it was such a passion of his in the early years, but he had a look and he was very cute and he was very natural. And so he started to get some roles here in Toronto, in Canada, like a little commercial. And then he was on a little show for a while. And then he got cast in an American film called Firstborn, starring Terry Garr. It was like her first dramatic role. He was about 12, I guess, at the time. And because it was American and the producers were famous and it was like a Paramount picture thing, he started to get known in America and he got more and more and more. And my parents were constantly traveling back and forth, Toronto to LA. And eventually, around 1986, they decided just to bite the bullet and move. I decided at that time, I went with them that summer. I was about 16. But I decided I wanted to come back up to Toronto and finish my schooling here. So they were there. I was here.
Wow. So it's so interesting. Were you, because at that time, remote work wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. So did they just quit everything, or what were they able to do for work?
I think at the time my mom was doing different kinds of work. She didn't have a career per se, but she did work outside the home, as we say nowadays for moms, because they work lots inside the home. But because my brother's life became so busy and frenetic, I think she kind of, came on and there was a lot to manage there. And my dad happened to be between things at the time and was able to switch and get some work down there. So it just ended up working out. Eventually, my parents separated. A year or two later, my dad came back up to Canada, went to Montreal, where he grew up. I was in Toronto. We were all over the place. And my mom and my brother stayed in LA.
Okay. Did you, I don't know the relationship with your family and your siblings, but was there ever, because you did acting yourself too, was there ever this like, man, why is not all of this happening to me?
To me. Yeah. You know what, to be honest with you, I felt that more later on. Earlier on, I was kind of happy for him. I was a little bit jealous, I suppose, but when I went down to LA at 16, I also had the same agent he did, and I got booked in a couple of roles, including there was a show in the 80s called Growing Pains. I don't know if you know that show, but and it was a lovely show. Anyway, I got booked on that show and I went to work for a couple, to play the friend of the sister. And I went to work for a couple of days and it was all exciting. And then they fired me because I didn't have American work papers. And I was Canadian and it didn't occur to us at the time. I mean, it was just like I booked it and it was great. And as a kid, I was like, you know what? It's super disappointing, of course, that I didn't get to film. But I was like, oh, they cast me in this thing. I must be good enough to be hired. And that was almost enough for me at the time. Many, many years later, when I was like, in the past, I don't know, 5, 10 years, my brother's been gone already almost 15 years, but I was like, oh, I miss it. I miss getting, I'm at an age now where I'm not getting too many roles or anything. And I was like, now I'm jealous. Now I'm jealous of all the work he did. It's a very childish, silly sort of reaction. But at the time, it was just kind of all exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, so then you said you moved back to Toronto at 16
Mhm.
and your mom and brother were in LA and dad was in Montreal. So who were
Yeah.
you living with in Toronto?
So in that first year, I kind of bounced around a lot. I lived with friends of the family. I had a boyfriend at the time, and I lived with his parents. I lived with his sister. Like I bounced around a lot that first year, and my parents like didn't like abandon me. They were still supporting me financially. I had a job. It was the 80s. Like you could kind of survive on less. And I think a year later, I ended up getting an apartment, like a little basement apartment or something that wasn't too expensive. But my parents were helping me out with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, so you're doing that, and then you end up going to the university, and you
Huh?
finish high school, go to the university. Did you, at this point too, did you feel like you were putting your acting dreams or pursuit on hold for your studies, or because you kind of still did some in your 20s? Was it like, no, I'm gonna do it for fun, or what was it like then?
Yeah, when I was getting my university degrees, it's actually quite funny. You know how kids rebel against the family. So we joke that I rebelled by getting 3 university degrees because I was the I was the first person in my family to go to university. My parents were born right after World War II in Europe. So, I'm a first generation Canadian. So I really wanted to have that. I really wanted to go to university. It was like a big focus of mine. And then I did miss it. So in my 20s, I did do a lot of community theater, which I learned, sometimes it's good, sometimes people kind of disparage community theater. But I learned that a lot of it is really, really, really good. And the reason
Mhm.
it's really, really, really good is because there's a lot of people who couldn't make a living doing acting either on the stage or on film and TV. They go and they find a profession. They're a lawyer, they're an accountant, they work in a grocery, whatever, and they're super crazy talented. And they do this on the side. And you have these people who are good enough to be professional, but it just didn't work out for them. So there's a lot of really, really good sort of quote unquote amateur theater everywhere,
Mhm.
probably. But in Toronto, it's really good.
Yeah. Well, and too, you think that, yeah, maybe they didn't either pursue it or they had other desires and
Mhm.
dreams, but it's something that they and you did as well, just as a hobby that you loved, that you like this craft that you could keep working on.
Mhm.
And even though it wasn't your profession, it was still something that you could enjoy.
Definitely, yeah, and I have so many good friends from doing shows 20 years ago even. Still, it's, camaraderie, and there is something about, "Let's get together and put on a show," and, it's volunteering in the community. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Is there a show that you resonate with the part the most or just like the storyline the most that you've done? I mean, I'm sure you've done so many, but
I've done
one
a
or two.
lot. The best show I ever did was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, written by Edward Albee. I did it, I don't know, 18 years ago or something. The reason is it's a very difficult show to do. It's 3 acts, it's highly emotional, it's exhausting. There's only 4 roles, and it's a monster of a play. And it's the kind of thing that once you do that play, it's like going to war with people? So the people you act with in that play become your family forever and ever. And so it has come to pass that those people that I did that show with all those years ago, I'm still close with. We see each other every summer. We go to see shows together. Like it's one of those. It's more the relationships that were built around that play,
Mhm.
but also it was a very satisfying theatrically. It was a very satisfying show to do something so huge. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the fact too, like you said, you've been able to maintain those relationships and those
Hmm.
friendships with everybody that was a part of it as
Yeah.
well. Okay, so we mentioned you did community theater
Hmm.
throughout in your 20s and you stopped due to a desire to have a child.
Yes.
But the struggle with dealing with infertility
Hmm.
from the age of 25 to 40
That's right.
was very pertinent and real for you. I want
Hmm.
to know, I mean, I know the feeling of desperately wanting a child, but to experience loss and grieving for such a long time,
Hmm.
for 15 years,
Yeah.
just throughout the span of infertility, it's a long span. But I'm just curious to know like some of the waves and how were
Uh-huh.
you able to get through? And were there moments of like, no, I need to stop. This is just not going to happen.
Yeah, it was a heck of a journey I'll say for sure. Like 15 years is a really long time.
Yeah.
And I had gotten married to my high school boyfriend and got pregnant and then lost that baby. And that's devastating. Some people, it was early on in the pregnancy. And I know that some people don't feel devastated when they lose early on. I did. And it's all good. The way you feel is how you feel. It was one of the first times in my life that the thing that I wanted, I wasn't able to achieve.
Mm.
Right? There was nothing I
Yeah.
could have done. And I came up from, I worked really hard. And so therefore I achieved this thing. I worked really hard and I got my university degree. And then I went to teacher's college and then whatever.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do anything. And then it really devastated me. We ended up separating. I got together with somebody else 5 years later. Same situation. Got pregnant, lost the baby. And then now I was on a mission. Now it's twice. So now it's not a coincidence. So doctors were like, well, we won't really start looking and investigating until you lose 3. And I fought for medical care. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, you want me to do this again? So I found that there were some issues, blood and progesterone and all the things. And I wasn't with that partner anymore. And I really, really wanted to do this. So I did end up going to a sperm bank. And I did about 6 cycles of purchasing the sperm. And it was quite interesting. Like, it was like looking through a little catalog, trying to find, the person. It didn't work. And the doctor had no reason why it didn't work. But it was so devastating every single time that it didn't work that I said, okay, I'm done with this piece of it. I'm going to now adopt. So I decided to adopt a baby from China as a single parent by choice. And I don't know if that program is still open, but at the time you could adopt as a single parent. So I went through that whole thing, social worker, getting a home study done and, $10,000. Like, it's very, very, very expensive, reference letters and on and on and on. But at the time, the China adoption program really slowed down. So all my paperwork was there, but I had to wait at least 6 years until a baby would be available to come home. So that was I was on hold. We called it being paper pregnant in those days. And you were just waiting. You were in the line, but it was going to take a very, very, very long time. I met very, very, very good friends at the time. At the time, everyone was doing a blog. And so we all had blogs about our journeys, and I met 5 other families who were going through the same thing. There's now 10 kids in our little circle we had no kids when we all met. Now there's 10 kids. Some are from China, some are from other means and ways of having babies. And in the meantime, I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And in the meantime, Facebook started and I met my husband, who we went to high school together. And at the beginning of Facebook, it was like you were just gathering people going, oh, I remember you. I remember you. And I was doing shows. I was so busy, but we went for coffee and got together. And it was like, wow, this is a thing, I think. And I wasn't in relationship mode. I was in, I'm going to have a baby by myself mode. I had a room for the baby in my little condo. I was like ready. But we fell in love and he proposed and we got engaged. And I said, we can't get married until the baby comes home because I can't suddenly not be a single parent because that's the program I'm in. So we're just going to wait. In the meantime, because it was taking so long, we said, let's try to have a baby. The doctors said, at this point, you're too old. We ended up going to the Czech Republic to do egg donation. There was this program called IVF Vacation. I'm not kidding. And you go to a little town in the Czech Republic, and it's a university town. They have lots of young women who are donating eggs, and he makes his little contribution. And while everyone's cooking, you go and travel. So, we traveled a little bit. I'd never been to Europe before. It did not work. On this journey, we also ended up adopting embryos from someone in Toronto who was a single mom by choice, and she had some embryos sort of on ice. And we had to adopt them with a lawyer. Didn't work. And then we were going to do Europe one more time. We said, let's do it. I'm doing all these things I don't even believe in. I'm doing acupuncture. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Let's just try last time, and then we're done. We'll get a dog. And I got pregnant naturally at 39.
Wow.
I did not believe that I would give birth to a live baby. In this journey, I also got pregnant. Like, I had not an ectopic pregnancy, but I can't remember what it was called now, but like a pregnancy that wasn't viable. Mm-hmm. So there was another loss somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant naturally. The entire time I did not believe I would give birth to a baby.
Sure.
Because I really had convinced myself at this point that my body does not do this. It's 15 years and it was my entire identity that I don't give birth to live babies. In the meantime, I was 35 weeks pregnant and my brother died.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a whole journey. We can discuss that in a second. And then I gave birth 5 days later, 5 weeks early. And she was alive and she was there. And it was like, oh my God, this actually happened. And then 2 years later, I got pregnant spontaneously with my little guy who's now 12. It's like, well, we did not expect that one either. So I don't know how it all happened because I had doctors tell me, like, you're just too old for this. You have no more eggs. But apparently we had a couple good eggs. So yeah.
I mean, what a roller coaster of emotions. My goodness. I mean, there's so much in all of that of being told you're never going to be able to have kids and then losing several pregnancies, which is horrible. And these hope of adoption and then these IVF vacations.
Yeah.
Which sounds very interesting.
It was so interesting.
Yeah. And then you have your baby early, you just lost your brother. Like, what? I mean, how were you able to get through? Like, just even the birth of your first child.
It was very crazy. So my brother dying, obviously, it was not expected. My brother had a history of drug addiction and so on, but he didn't die of an overdose. He was doing very, very well when he died, but he was quite sick. He had pneumonia. And at the autopsy, we learned he also had a very enlarged heart, which is something my mother has, and it's genetic. And I'm now being tested for that to see if my kids need to get tested for that. So soon I get to go do lots of fun tests. We're trying to figure it all out. But he died of pneumonia. His lungs filled up with fluid. He died. So we weren't expecting that to happen. And then I think going into labor obviously wasn't expected. I ended up having a C-section. I was not able to go to the funeral. Because because I had her on a Monday and the funeral was on a Tuesday. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. And I think the only way I survived was literally just compartmentalizing every single thing in my brain, because after all these years of not having a baby, now I'm very pregnant with a baby that I hope is going to be born alive, but I don't want to stress myself too much because what if, right? And it was just, my parents literally went from the cemetery to the hospital to see the baby. Like, it was such a crazy time. And that baby is turning 15 in a few days.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been a long journey and worth every second, but a very difficult and amazing time.
Yeah. I believe that. That. The doctor said we can't believe you're too old to have a kid. Which love hearing that. Not.
They don't know. Yeah, they don't know things all the time. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So they say you're too old to have a kid, then you have a child, and you said you were 30. Were you 39 when you had her or when you got pregnant?
I was 40 when I gave birth. I was 40 when you gave birth. Yeah.
Okay. Just so you know, I just gave birth, almost a year ago, and I was 40 when I had her. So
congrats.
We're in good company.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm curious to know, because the doctor said you're too old and then you have this baby at 40, especially I guess 15 years ago, it happens. I mean, my grandma as well, but society will say like, you're too old. Doctors say you're too old. So how were you able to, I guess, what were your thoughts of being a 40-year-old mother for the first time, this dream that you always wanted, and then also everyone else, quotes, that's having a newborn is 10 years younger, maybe 15.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were actually at a birthday party when my son was 5. So I had him surprised 2 years later, chatting with other moms and dads. And one of the moms of a 5-year-old, turns out my husband used to be a school teacher like me in the school system. He was her music teacher when she was in grade 1. This mom. So and we have children the same age, right?
Yeah.
It was one of those things. I think about age a lot, actually. And it was one of those things where, there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. You have a lot of energy when you're young, but you don't really know what you're doing necessarily. And there's advantages to being older because you've lived more. But also now I'm tired. Like that's also becoming a little bit problematic. I'm in my mid-50s now, and sometimes and my kids are still young and they want to do this and that, and I'm very tired, and it's like, okay, what was my mom doing? What was my mom doing at 40? Well, at 40, I had what my mother was 40, I had moved out. There were no, like, I had already left home by the time my mother was 40. I remember my parents turning 30. Like, they had me in their very early 20s. So it's such a different thing to be an older mom. I'm not one who likes to listen too much to the riffraff about being older. I have friends who had babies older than me, like 45, whatever. We're all doing the best we can, no matter what age we are, and you just gotta kind of plow through, I guess, and just it is what it is. This is when we had it, and this is our family. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the
yeah,
fact that you were able to, when you didn't think that this was going to even be possible.
that
And then
was
all of,
shocking. Yeah,
yeah. Well, and I'm even thinking too
yeah.
of with the adoption and
hmm
then the embryo adoption too. And nothing worked.
Nothing worked, and I
Y-
was very bitter about that for a long time. And then other
Sure.
people were people around me who were also, I knew a lot of people who dealt with infertility because I was going through that adoption process. So either they were able to adopt or they were able to have a baby in some way. And at one point I was just very bitter about it. At one point I said to my husband, no one has waited longer than me. It's been 15 years of this. And eventually it happened. And I'm really glad it happened. I didn't know if it would happen, and I wouldn't have known how to process it if it didn't happen. I would have, I guess, because you just do. And having kids, as you know, it's like all encompassing and there's never a break. And now that I'd love to say I'm middle aged, but now that I'm past middle aged, she said as she lives to 110. Now I'm like, okay, I want to have some time to myself. And I have these kids. So it's like now we're getting to a point where I can start doing a little bit more on my own and be a little more flexible with them because they're getting older. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it's still, I'm just, I think that's so neat that
Mhm.
that ended up happening when
Yeah,
that did not look like that was
it
going to
did not.
be the projection of your life. Well, so you touched base that you're a school teacher, but to share with the audience, you're a teacher of deaf and hard of hearing
That's
children.
right.
That's for your day job.
Yeah.
And you really did miss acting though. And so during COVID, you wrote a pilot titled Demonstration
Mhm.
Sport, which is a mockumentary about a mom who dreams of winning a gold medal in competitive napping.
Yeah.
So so interesting.
Yeah.
How did you get this idea? And then I'm also curious to know, yes, it was the middle of COVID. I guess we didn't, have
Mhm.
as much to do, but then why, like, okay, I'm going to write this pilot. How did all that come to
Yeah.
be?
So it's a short film, actually. It's not a pilot. I had written a pilot because there's no acting work, especially during COVID. There was like very little for me to do acting wise. I have a lovely, wonderful agent who submits me for lots of work, but it's very hard to get even an audition. And I had friends who said, "Gotta write something." All right, all right. So I wrote a lovely script and of a pilot. And they're like, "Well, that's very nice, but now you need to make something." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know how to make something." So they make a short film. So, we were, it was just one of those funny things when you're talking, God, I'm so tired. No, I'm so tired. No, oh my God, no, I could win the gold medal in being tired. Like it was like a funny conversation. I'm like, oh, that would actually be hilarious. Like literally training to nap and different, So I ended up writing this short film and I didn't know how to make it, but I found, another actor who had made some. So I called her and I said, "How do you do this?" And she said, "Oh, here, here, here," and she had a director who came on board and she was wonderful. And that director knew a cinematographer. I didn't know how to do any of this, but people knew people. We raised some money and somehow we got it made during COVID. So we made sure everyone was tested and it was, a whole thing. And we ended up moving a bed into the gym of a church because that's where you work out is in a gym. So we got a big queen size bed into this church, and it's I'm very happy with it for my first film. It's hilarious. It's fun. It was silly. I put it into some festivals. It did fairly well, and it looks good. It looks the way I wanted it to look, and I was like, "Holy crow, we made a movie!" And I'm really proud of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
When you said you had to fundraise, so because I know some lingo, like even saying, "Oh, it wasn't a pilot; it was a short film." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, there's a difference," you know.
I guess it could be
That's
a
good.
pilot. Yeah. Whole
That's
series
good to.
of competitive snapping. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's now I'm like, okay, now I know where all that is. But like to even think, oh, you would have to fundraise to even have a film. So how did you do the fundraising? How did that kind of come?
I ended up doing like a GoFundMe or one of these things.
Oh,
And I just made little videos, whatever. My late brother, has still a lot of fans who are super loyal and wonderful. And a lot of them donated little bits to my movie, which
wow.
was so nice, so generous. And you give little incentives, like you put the names in the credits or whatever it was. So we raised enough to do this movie because my actors didn't get paid. We were doing it through something called the ACTRA co-op program. ACTRA is the Actors Union here in Canada. So basically, if the movie makes money, we all make money, but short films don't usually get sold in that way. So they all knew they were coming into it with that. And certain things, you had to rent things. I had to feed everybody. Like it was a big crew and food costs a lot of money. It was two full days of shooting. And, the thing about GoFundMe is, though, I don't think I could do it again. All these people were super generous and I got my movie made, but I don't think I would do it a second time because once you can only, in my mind, you should only do it once. Say everyone was generous, they threw money at you, and now find your own money. um, yeah, I still sometimes go, I can't believe we actually did that,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really neat too to just, decide, okay, I'm gonna do this,
Mm-hmm.
and then you make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of time had passed since you had done acting and this whole, you're teaching, and then
Mm-hmm.
the the family and everything with that, like and just to be able to do that and accomplish that is huge. It's great. So you had, you wrote this, you got it produced, filmed it, everything. It's out there, and then you also booked an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what time frame all of that was in together.
I think the agent was before the film.
Agent was
Yeah.
performed. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. When you booked the agent, were your hopes to kind of get, I guess, get more commercials, get film, TV,
Yeah.
movies?
I just wanted to start up again. And a friend of mine had this same agent. And I said, "Can you introduce me to your agent?" He said, "Sure." And then she told me later, I don't even know if she'd remember this, but that because I was, however old I was at the time, 48, 49, I don't know, she wasn't going to sign me because I think she had other women of the same age and, looking similar, whatever. But I don't know if so much now, but at the time I looked quite a bit younger than I was. So I kind of tend to go out for roles about 10 years younger than my actual age. So she did sign me. I got I got a couple of little commercials and little things here and there. I eventually was able to join the union, which was a goal of mine. When you join a union, things slow down quite a bit because it's like a different pool of actors. So you have to kind of get to know all the casting people again in a different way. So it's been slow since then, especially since COVID. And then there was that strike in the States,
Yeah.
was it the Screen Actors Guild strike or the writer? Yeah, or the Writers
Yeah.
Guild. I can't even remember now.
Writers.
There were both actually.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot.
So there was a big trickle down effect to the work here because a lot of American things shoot up here. So it's been slow. I've tried to really shift my attitude when I do get auditions. I'm always super happy to get an audition because you've already sort of jumped through one hoop to even get the audition. And I really try to look at it now as the audition is the job and the booking is the bonus.
Mm,
So the audition is the work. So I always do the best I can on my auditions. Like I make it look good. I'm always off book. Like I have all my lines memorized. Like I really, really try to do an excellent job at my auditions. And then it's kind of out of my hands. That's the hardest part for me is just forgetting about it. I think it's the hardest part for a lot of actors. It's like, because you always wish, you're like, oh, I can see myself doing this role. And in acting, you don't hear from anybody. Like in other industries, when you don't get a job, they send you an email and go, we've gone another way, or the role has been filled, or whatever. In acting, it's just kind of out there. No one communicates with you, and it's super frustrating.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, but that's just the way it is. So you have to kind of just go, all right, I haven't heard in 5 days. I guess nothing's happening. And you move on.
Now, how were you able to book the auditions or go to the auditions in hopes for getting a part while working with your teaching job?
So now since COVID, everything is self-tape. Pretty
Oh, that's
much. I have not been in an actual audition room in about 3 years. Even a callback that I had was on Zoom. So now I have like I don't really have a permanent setup, but it's a whole thing. I have to set up this backdrop and iron the backdrop because it gets all wrinkly from the last time you put it away, and set it up. And there's a ring light and whatever. And it's not perfect, but it's fairly good conditions to record. I always get my poor husband to read with me. He's been my daughter. He's been my mother. He's been my husband. So almost every first audition now is a self-tape. If I got a callback, I would have to somehow arrange, and it was in person, I would have to arrange my day to get there or arrange the time of the audition to make it appropriate for me to get there. And then if I booked it, I would have to deal with that later, how I dealt with that. So one headache at a time, but yeah.
I find that interesting too, that, the video auditions, because you get so much just from like a person's presence when you're around them.
I miss the room. I miss going in and saying hello to people, and you see people, and there is a sense of camaraderie sort of, and just that energy. And also I have personal silly little rules when I am auditioning. I don't let myself do more than 3 takes unless I've really messed something up badly. But for all they know, I did 150 takes and I've chosen the best one. So I don't really understand how they know how I'm going to work when I'm on set that day. If I did this all day long and I'm giving you my best one, I don't know. I just find the whole thing, maybe they would learn more in a callback. But my own personal rule is that I do 3 takes and I pick one and we go from there. Because otherwise, I really feel like they look at you, and the minute they look at you, not that they don't watch the whole thing because they say they do, and you never know that either. But I feel like if they look at you and go, no, that's not the look we're looking for. Or maybe it is, let's think about it. And I don't want to devote my entire day to doing this. And also there's a time factor too. Now it's hours and hours of setup and taking down and editing and it's you have to be sort of this technical wizard now to do all of this stuff. I'm very good at it now. I'm very good at just putting it in and editing it and shipping it off. And my agent has been super patient with me as I've learned, as we've all learned as we've gone along, right? So yeah.
So interesting. Just a whole different world over there, doing all of that. So when you wrote to me too, you said, you weren't booking as many gigs, just, kind of like you were saying now as well. And so you decided to pivot to stand up.
Yeah.
And how were you looking at the no's how was it for you when you received these no's, when it was just something that you love so much? And then then you decide, I'm going to do the stand-up.
It's very frustrating. It's, again, for me, I think it's a control thing, the whole baby thing, why I was so devastated and it became my identity because I couldn't get the thing that I wanted. And that's really hard to accept. And it's the same thing with acting. It's I know I would do a good job in this role. Why are they not picking me? I'm hilarious. I'd be so funny as the neighbor in this, whatever. And it's frustrating. And you never know why. They don't give you notes and they don't tell you anything. Just like you and I communicated originally on Threads, another friend of mine, Kelly, who's one of my podcast co-hosts, found me on, I think it was Instagram, and she does this really cute YouTube cooking show called It'll Be Fine. And she said, we had a mutual friend. She said, would you like to come on my cooking show? I said, okay. So I went over, we cooked an apple pie. It was really fun. And we were laughing the whole time. And she's a go-getter. She didn't start doing stand-up till she was in her early 40s, mid-40s. She's only in her mid-40s now. And she's busy. She's everywhere. She's unbelievable, this woman. Her name's Kelly Zemnikas, and she's amazing. She says, and we were chatting about food, and she said, is a hamburger a sandwich? And I said, no. And I was like, wait, why did I answer so quickly? Is it a sandwich? So she's like, oh my God, this would be such a funny podcast to discuss that question. And I'm like, what are you talking about, a podcast? Anyway. Then she said, and Mary Kennedy from LA, who's a stand-up in LA, she'd be also a great co-host. I didn't know what she was talking about. She sends me this email. So I'm thinking we can do 6 episodes, and I'm thinking 6 episodes on is a hamburger a sandwich? It's like a 20-minute conversation at best. And she said, yeah, and our other friend, Matt Ardill, will produce and he'll be with us. And I'm like, what are you talking? She makes things happen. Like, she's unbelievable. So all of a sudden we have this podcast. We are about to start recording season 10. Every 6 episodes is a season. And we all answer crazy food questions like that. So Matt and Mary and Kelly, my co-hosts, are all stand-ups. I am not a stand-up. I'm hilarious, but I'm not a stand-up. And then it was like they were a bad influence on me. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll try it. And it was just one of those things, like, there's no work happening, but you got to make work happen.
Yeah.
So I'm actually a breast cancer survivor. I had breast cancer 2 years ago, and I decided I would talk about that in stand-up. It's not a hilarious topic, but I make it funny. And I thought, I'll do it. I'm going to try. So I went to an open mic. I tried it. I didn't die. I wasn't worried about this being on stage part. I was like, oh my God, it's so scary. It wasn't, the stage part wasn't scary for me because I've been on stage a million times. It's is any of this going to be funny? Like, I think it's funny, but is my humor going to relate? And a lot of the people in the audience are much, much, much younger. A lot of the comics are much, much younger. Will I be accepted? All the things you worry about. But it was fun. I haven't done it a ton. And I'm doing a show on Sunday, and I'm actually going to be doing a show for Gilda's Club. You know, Gilda Radner, who was on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s. She was there's an organization in her honor for cancer, and I'm going to do my cancer material. So I'm very excited about that. That's next Monday, and it's hard. It's hard to come up with stuff. It's hard to write the stuff. It's in your head, it might sound one way, and then you get up there and you kind of go, oh my God, what did I just say? It's all like a fever dream, but I'm super glad I did it. I would have always kind of wondered. I don't know how long I'll do it for. I don't know, if it's a thing, if it's really a career move, or if it's just fun right now. I'm glad I did it, though. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are your podcast co-hosts, your stand-up friends, what do they say when they see your stand-up routine?
Well, I think they're happy for me. I think they're pretty proud of me for doing it. I laugh that they're the bad influence. I'm very impressed by all of them, and I'm so inspired by them and the things that they do. So I find that great. Like, I just love that they were such an influence on me. And to try something that I never thought I would try. Like, I love watching stand-up, but I love improv. I love sketch. I love doing all of that stuff. I never thought I would try stand-up. I just thought it's just not, I love to watch it, but I don't think I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, as an observer of stand-up comedians and then just watching anyone performing, it is performing, but it's very different because it's kind of like, I mean, like you're saying, you were talking about personal things that you dealt with, but with a comedic twist on it. And so it's still like part, it's something that I guess every time you perform, it's something you create, but it's still something that you created yourself.
I actually got invited. I did win this competition, which was super exciting. And one of the people in the audience came to me afterwards, this young woman, and she said she is a member of this place called Young Adult Cancer Canada. And they're doing their first comedy night in a couple weeks. Would I like to come? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, please. So I went and did it. And there are 5 other comics, I think, that night, all of whom had cancer. And it was the first time I was nervous before I went up. Like, we were all chatting before the show started. In my head, I'm looking at them all going, oh my God, what if your cancer is funnier than my cancer? Like, it was so crazy. But that was such an amazing night to have all these people who really got it. It was really cool.
I bet. Yeah. And making something that's been, a very hard situation, something that's very hard for you or other people who are dealing with it, and just being able to laugh about it, because that's kind of what you need.
Don't get me wrong. There's nothing funny about cancer, but there's funny experiences when you have cancer that are fun to talk about, or, and there's nothing fun about it. And there's nothing funny about the getting diagnosed or whatever. But some of the things that happen around it are so bonkers that they're hilarious. So, yeah.
And people who get it will get it,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, something you mentioned with just the stand up and obviously this is a podcast about age because I'm very passionate about realizing where you are and being more than the number that's equated to your age. And, even saying like, okay, I'm doing stand up and a lot of the other comedians, they're a lot younger. So how, even with that, whether this stays as a hobby or you do this, it becomes a career, who knows? We don't know what's going to happen with that. But how have you had to push away any negative limiting beliefs about starting something new in your 50s, even with your film?
So I just turned 55 a couple of weeks ago. I love my birthday. I enjoy my birthday. I tell people about my birthday. Love it. This is the first year ever that I was like, oh my God, I'm 55. Like it's the first time I'm feeling older, like really older. And I'm really trying to manage that and deal with that. I'm taking a musical improv class and there's one other guy in my class who's like my age-ish, but everyone else is super young. And I'm used to that now with all the classes I take. I'm learning to embrace it a little bit. I did an improv with a friend who's my age, and we just embraced that. We had a young guy come and play guitar for our musical improv set, and we just called him our grandson, and we're like, this is our lovely grandson. And I'm really struggling with it, honestly. I think it is what it is. So I'm 55, and the way I always used to think about it is this. Listen, you can be 55 and be a comedian, or be 55 and not be a comedian, right? I can be 60 and finally get my pilot made, the pilot that I wrote that I really want to have made, but I don't know how to do that yet. I'm learning how to do it, trying to find the people who'll help me make it. So I can be 60 with a pilot or 60 without a pilot, And I think that's the thing that kind of gets me through all this. Like, when I went back to school to become a teacher of the deaf, I remember thinking, should I even do this? When I graduate, I'll be 35, right? I was already a teacher, but to do that specialty. And a friend of mine said, you can be 35 with this degree or 35 without this degree. Like, you'll be 35 regardless. And I was like, So that's the little thought in my brain when the age thing gets to me, I'm going, maybe I'm too old for this. Because there is a thing about women in particular that you do become very invisible when you get older. No one is interested in what you have to say. Or there's an impression that no one is interested in what you have to say. And I have a lot to say, and I want to say it. And I want people listening to me. And I want people listening to each other. And I want to listen to the other people. Like, I don't know where we got this thing that it's only that younger age group that has something valid to say, and how our elderly, even as a kid, I'd look at the old people in my family and barely talk to them, barely look at them. I have nothing to say to these people. They're just kind of sitting there. And in my own head now, I'm thinking, okay, at which age is that going to be me? At which point do I think my brain will shut off and I'm not going to be worth talking to anymore? I don't think that at all. So why are we like, when you think about your own thoughts and your own brain, like, are you really going to get to a point where you're not worth talking to and not worth listening to? And I don't think that, and I don't think you think that, and I don't think most people think that. They just think, yeah, my thoughts are important. I don't know why when you look at older people, we've all decided, you're kind of just done. I don't want to be done yet. And I don't think anyone's done. And I love when I see older people like me in the classes. I love it. I'm like, okay, there's other people here who are doing this for the first time too. Like people doing stand-up or doing comedy or doing anything for the first time. I find it really exciting and inspiring and kind of comforting, going, okay, I don't have to stop learning new stuff just because I'm 55. My voice is valid. My work is valid. I just think there's a lot to say. And I think as women, we kind of have to push a little bit more to get in there to say what we need to say.
Yeah. Yeah. You saying too that I don't know, how we got to where or what age you look at somebody who is older and you don't care what they have to say. You're just like, they're just sitting there. And that's heartbreaking to hear because like, at one point we will get to that age. And hopefully the ones in our lives won't respond that way, or we're doing all this work to just like help people and tell people to realize there's other cultures that the elders are highly
Yes.
respected
Yes.
and esteemed. And so I guess in our North American neck of the woods, it's not as much the case, which is very, very sad. But, I appreciate you being honest too, of just stating like, yeah, turning 55 was hard, but to realize that what your friend said to you when you got the extra degree or certification of, you could be 35 and have it or not, or you could be 60 and writing your pilot or not, just doing all these different things or not be doing it.
Right.
And I had somebody say that. I had a guest previously who kind of shared the same thing of something very similar of just, I could be pursuing this or just going to the grave and that just be the end of it.
Yeah.
So,
Like we never know when the end is. And that's also what I've been thinking about is when is the end, right? Like I feel like obviously I'm getting closer to it. We're all getting closer to it, but it could be tomorrow and it could be in 40 years. And I don't like not knowing stuff. I like control and there's no control. And as I get older, I'm learning more and more about how little control I have. So I kind of like taking a class or learning something new, or, to keep a little bit of control about what I'm doing. Yeah, it's hard. I find it really tricky these days. Like for myself to go, okay, 55. Like to me, that's like this big, huge number, more than 50. Like 50 didn't bother me one bit. And it's not that this bothers me. It's like this realization that there's an end eventually. And how do I want to end it? How do I want to get to the end of this? Do I want to be that person who's trying new things and is being brave and whatever? Or do I want to hide under the covers? Mostly I want to hide under the covers, but you have to kind of do fun stuff. I keep saying to my husband, I want to do more fun stuff because eventually it'll end.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you want to enjoy this time. And then also something to think too of if people younger are viewing people that are older like, oh, there's nothing left, then they're going to continue to have that mindset. But then if they're seeing people like you or others who are still doing the things that they want and they're not letting that number get to them, then they can realize, oh, I can look forward to this
I like
too.
that a lot. And I'm very open about my age, which may be why I'm not getting acting work because I can go out for like 35 to 45-year-old roles. But I do tell people I'm 55. Like I don't lie about my age and a lot of actors do. And I've been told not to be open about my age. I don't like that. I've been told, a doctor told me recently, oh, you don't look 55. And I said to him what I always say, which other people say is, this is what 55 looks like for me. This is it. I'm not doing anything fancy. Like, right now, I'm just wearing lipstick. I'm not wearing makeup, and this is just my face. I can't do anything about it. Some of my friends who are my age look a little bit older. Some of my friends look a little bit younger. I'm actually 55. Like, what do you want me to say, right? Like, I was born in 1970. Here's my thing. Like, and I like when I go on stage, like when I'm doing an improv class or whatever, and I'm on stage with people in their 20s, and on stage, we are equals. On stage, we're together. We got to help each other. We're a team, blah, blah, blah. It's great. They can't look at me like, ugh, what's this old woman doing here? Like, we got to help each other. So I just think, I love that you're doing this podcast. I love listening to your podcast. I just think it's so inspiring. I think having these voices is so important. And I think if someone's like kind of wondering, like, should I take this class or should I do this thing that I've never done? Or should I go on a vacation by myself? Oh my God, just do it. You have to do it because you won't regret doing it. It might not be the thing that you thought it would be, but you won't regret doing it.
Right. Yeah. You won't look back and say, oh man, I wish I didn't take that trip.
Right. You might go, oh, I don't think I do like vacationing alone. Like if you've always wondered, right? You might go, well, I did it. And I've learned, no, I'd rather have company, whatever. Yeah. It's just, I think it's so important that we talk about this stuff and that we talk together. And I just love that you have this podcast.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. Yeah. You kind of probably just answered my last question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's the question I ask everybody. So if you could encourage one woman who does feel blocked or limited to pursue whatever the dream is or the goal based on her age or life circumstance, what would you say to her?
I would say, imagine not having done that thing and picture yourself in 2 years. So let's say you're 68 years old now. and you have this major thing you want to do or this minor thing you want to do, and it's really, you don't think ready to do it. And in 2 years, you're blowing out the candles on your 70th birthday and you didn't do it. Whereas you could do it right now. Go sign up for the thing. Go, even if you go to one class and you hate it, fine. Even if you do a stand-up routine and you bomb, no one's going to die. Who cares? Like, I think that's a lot of it too, is realizing not everything is as serious as we think it is. Everyone's like, oh my God, what if you bomb on stage? So what? Do I care? Do I know these people?
Right.
Like in my 20s, that would have probably devastated me. But now I'm like, you know what? It's embarrassing for 5 minutes and then you get over it. Like as you get older, you're like, not everything is a life and death situation. Just try, do it. Do it, because you're going to end up 2 years older anyway. That's what I would say.
I like it.
Yeah.
I love it. Cari, tell us where we could find you and anything you want to plug.
I am at Cari _Haim, HAIM _actor _writer. I lost my Instagram one. So Cari Haim, actor, writer, on Instagram, on some of the other socials as well. Nothing major to plug. If you're in the Toronto area, I periodically do some shows here and there. So you can always Google and see where I end up.
Awesome. Well, Cari, thank you so much for taking the time. I really just appreciate your honesty and just sharing your story as well. So thank you for joining me today on the More Than Your Age podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.